You know, it's one of the shortest books in the Bible. We're talking a single page. But the prophecy of Obadiah, it is also one of the most intense. I mean, it is just packed with judgment, ancient rivalries, and a really challenging message about divine justice. So what are we supposed to make of a book like this today? Well, let's dive in and break it down.
And okay, right off the bat, we've got to tackle a really tough question that comes up with books like Obadiah. When you read about this kind of violent judgment, it can feel, well, pretty uncomfortable, right? It's a long, long way from the stories a lot of us grew up with. So what are we supposed to do with passages like these?
The thing is, the goal here isn't to excuse this stuff or sweep it under the rug. It's about trying to understand the logic within the text itself. The book is basically asking us to spot a pattern, a principle of divine justice, where God is shown as stepping in to bring a violent world back into balance.
So how does that actually work? Well, the ancient prophets had this really powerful way of looking at it, a framework we can call justice as reversal. And the idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly profound. Basically, the punishment fits the crime, like exactly fits the crime. Whatever a nation does to other people, that's what's going to be done to them.
Okay, to really get a feel for this, let's look at a super clear, really dramatic example from another book, the Book of Nahum. He wrote about the judgment coming for the brutal Assyrian Empire. And his prophecy, it's like a textbook example, a masterclass, really, in this whole idea of reversal.
Just look at how specific this gets. It's wild. The Assyrians, they love to brag that their king was like a storm god, an unstoppable flood. So what does the prophecy do? It flips that right back in their face, declaring that God is the real storm. And get this, Assyrian kings love to have themselves carved into stone as these mighty lions hunting their enemies. The prophecy's response? That big Assyrian lion is about to become the one being hunted.
And it doesn't stop there. The Assyrian army was, infamous for being just absolutely brutal. They'd leave piles of bodies everywhere they went. So the prophecy grabs that exact image and turns it back on them, saying their own cities will be so full of bodies, people will be stumbling over them. It's perfect. It's chilling. That's justice as reversal.
Okay, so that's how the principle works for a huge, powerful empire. But what about our main subject here, the tiny little nation of Edom? How does this same logic apply to them? Well, their story is totally different. It's much more personal, and really, it all boils down to family.
Yeah, the prophecy in Obadiah, it's like a legal case, and it lays out a very specific charge sheet against Edom. It all starts as a story of family betrayal, but it blows up into a national crime. And the judgment? It's tied directly to what they did.
So there are two main charges on the table. First up, this crazy over-the-top pride. And second, and this is really the core of the whole thing, is violence against their brother nation, Judah, right when they were at their weakest.
Now, this pride Edom had, it wasn't just, a bad attitude. It was literally baked into their geography. They lived in this incredible region of Red Rock Mountains, a natural fortress, basically. You can just imagine them looking out from the cliffs and thinking, yeah, we're untouchable up here. No way anyone can get to us. But the prophet says that very pride is what tricked them. And this is where that pride curdles into something much, much worse: betrayal. Because when the Babylonians came in and just leveled Jerusalem, Edom didn't just sit back and watch. Oh no, they stood on the sidelines and cheered. They even jumped in to help loot the city. And you have to understand, this wasn't just some random neighbor. This was family. The Israelites came from Jacob, and the Edomites, they came from his twin brother Esau. So a crime that deep, how is justice going to be delivered? Well, the prophets have a name for this kind of moment, this day of reckoning. It's a huge theme in their writings. They call it the Day of the Lord. The best way to think about it is like a great cosmic settling of accounts. It's this idea of a moment in history when God steps in directly to set things right, judging nations for their arrogance and violence, but also making a way for his own people to be saved. And bam, right in the heart of Obadiah, you get the one verse that just pulls it all together. It connects this Day of the Lord right back to our big idea. See, it's not about some random, out-of-control anger. It's about perfect, symmetrical consequences. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your deeds shall return on your own head. Okay, but let's be real. Was this just talk, an empty threat, or did any of this actually happen? Well, this is where it gets crazy, because when you look at the actual historical record, it looks like Obadiah's prophecy came true with just stunning accuracy.
Check out this timeline. It's pretty wild. In 593 BC, Edom and Judah are literally in talks to team up against Babylon. But just 7 years later, Edom does a complete 180 and helps Babylon burn Jerusalem to the ground. But then, and here's the reversal, less than 40 years after that, who comes knocking on Edom's door? The very same Babylonians. They turn on Edom and wipe them out. And the final nail on the coffin? The Nabateans, the guys who built that amazing city of Petra, they come in and drive the Edomites out of their homeland forever.
And the Bible itself actually comes back to this story. Centuries later, you have the prophet Malachi, and he points to what happened to Edom, their total permanent destruction, and he holds it up as proof of God's love for Israel. Think about it. Israel was also judged, but they were brought back and restored. Edom, their ruin was final. That was a huge statement for the people who had just come back from their own exile.
Okay, so we've got this clear principle, justice as reversal. We've got a really dramatic story of it playing out in history. But what does any of this mean for us, right now? Let's pull the camera back and look at the bigger picture.
I mean, really, why should we care about some ancient beef between two nations that happened, 2,500 years ago? Is this just a history lesson, or is there something more going on here?
Well, the way this source material presents it, this is way more than a one-off event. It's meant to show us a timeless pattern. The stories of Assyria and Edom, they're not just about Assyria and Edom. They're like models or archetypes, showing how God deals with proud, oppressive world powers throughout all of history.
This pattern is exactly why, for instance, when you get to the book of Revelation, it uses the code name Babylon to talk about the Roman Empire. It's not because they thought Rome was literally Babylon. It's because Rome was fitting the pattern of Babylon. The message is pretty clear. Any powerful empire, whatever its name, that acts with that same kind of pride and injustice, it's gonna face that same kind of accountability.
And that brings us to a final, pretty challenging thought from the theologian Peter Lathart. He says that any modern superpower, including America, finds itself caught in this very same tension. Now, this isn't about making some specific prediction about the future, not at all. It's about recognizing this ancient pattern. And it really forces us to ask a tough question. How did the powerful nations of our time stack up against these ancient warnings to places like Assyria and Edom? It's a heavy question for sure, but it shows just how these ancient texts can still speak so directly to the world we're living in right now.